this engine better? What do we need to do? Okay, well, let's calculate, if it's a gasoline engine, how do you get to a higher RPM or better compression ratio? I'm using like outdated analogy for engines, but you can say for an electric motor, what steps would you take to get higher torque, and pull higher power out of this electric motor? And then you can explain. It's obvious why things like Maxwell's equations become necessary in that situation. Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Elon, you would not believe the number of parents and people with kids who have asked us about tonight. And I think there are two questions that are connected. One is, how do kids, if you're having a kid and you want teachers to become a polymath like you have become, what advice you have for parents? And the next one is, here you are with, so many companies that you've created that I can't even list them on the top of my head. Why doesn't the world have, and this doesn't mean to sound, psychopathic, but why doesn't the world have more Elon Musks?
Well, I don't know. I might be getting too much credit here. For me, these things I've done have been because I felt a strong compulsion to do them. So it's not like nobody's pushing me to do it, but they're just like I felt a strong compulsion to do them. I wouldn't say there are pretty long sections of my life that have been very painful and difficult, and I'm not sure if people would want to do that. There's if somebody wants to be me or do the things I've done, I would say most probably you're mistaken. You do not want to do that. You'd have to have some kind of like
the audience who just caught up and you managed to squeeze in. Just a quick reset/recap. This is the one and only Elon Musk for his first time on Clubhouse, and this is a show that we do every single day. I know a lot of you are trying to get in the room. There are a bunch of overflow rooms. See if we can get it there. But we're just having an amazing conversation with Elon. Elon, okay. This is something you joked about, but I'm kind of curious to get your, maybe serious answer to this, which is all things cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. You famously just changed your Twitter bio to just the Bitcoin logo and the word Bitcoin this week. What do you think of cryptocurrency? What do you think of Bitcoin? What do you think of other cryptocurrencies? I'd love to get your take on the entire thing.
Well, I got to watch what I say here because some of these things can really move the market. First of all, I should say many friends of mine have tried to convince me to get involved in Bitcoin for a long time, like from where it first just popped, it popped out there. A friend of my bully, he actually had Bitcoin cake, a cake that was had a bit sort of Bitcoin symbol on it, and he fed me a slice of Bitcoin cake in 2013. So, clearly I should have at least bought some Bitcoin 8 years ago. What more do people need to do? Jesus, talk about being late to the party. So I was a little slow on the uptake there. My apologies. But I think about it a fair bit. But I do at this point think Bitcoin is a good thing. So I am a supporter of Bitcoin. Like I said, I'm late to the party, but I am a supporter of Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin is really on the verge of getting broad acceptance by sort of the conventional finance people, So, Yeah, I think so. I don't have a strong opinion on other cryptocurrencies. I mean, occasionally I make jokes about Dogecoin, but they are really just meant to be jokes. But Dogecoin is made as a joke to make fun of cryptocurrencies, obviously. But fate loves irony, and often, as a friend of mine said, the most ironic outcome is most likely, or as I say, the most entertaining outcome is often most likely, and arguably the most entertaining outcome and the most ironic outcome would be that Dogecoin becomes the currency of Earth in the future.
Oh my God. Elon, when you tweeted me this afternoon, I will say my tweet replies have been overwhelmed by probably like a zillion different cryptocurrency coins. But by the way, you might remember the infamous time when your replies were filled with cryptocurrency bots on Twitter.
Oh my God, it was insane. Yeah.
That's actually how Elon and I actually wound up meeting because that was a very painful time. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, and then I made a joke about Bitcoin, and my account got locked.
Yeah. I had to actually try and convince some folks that was actually the real Elon Musk and get his account unblocked. Okay. So I want to bring us back to one of your companies. We actually have a Tesla Model S sitting outside our house right now. It carries us and our 2-year-old baby around, and we love it. Would love to just get your take on, where you see, you just have a refresh of the Model S coming out. I just saw the review for it. Where do you just see, the future for Tesla, and especially when it comes to all things battery technology and self-driving? Those two topics I think a lot of people are very interested in.
Okay, so you're asking about the future of batteries and self-driving?
More like actually, where do you see Tesla over the next few years?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that. The goal with Tesla is to, and has been from the beginning, is to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy. So, in order to do that, we've got to make a lot of cars. We've got to make them increasingly affordable, and our rough target is we want to be able to eventually make 20 million cars a year. And the reason for that is the 2 billion active cars and trucks on the road, and figure you're not really moving the needle unless you're changing 1% of the existing fleet. And so that's roughly how we came up with 20 million cars and trucks per year. That's very important to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy. And then, of course, we've got stationary battery packs and solar, which is making a lot of progress in that front. So yeah, we're going to try to grow car production as fast as possible, and that the primary limiting factor there is battery cell production. So we're getting as much as possible from suppliers, and then, but even that is not enough. So we're actually going to be building battery cells ourselves. But it's important to emphasize that to our suppliers who are great suppliers, that we're not trying to put them out of business. We want them to increase their rate as well. So Panasonic, LG, and CATL, and then to add to increase to accelerate sustainable energy further, we're making our own cells, and we're very excited about that. And then, anyway, so I think you expect, possibly an acceleration of compounding annual growth. Well, at least aspirationally, that's our goal. And then combine that with autonomy, and it's a very powerful story because once you have autonomy with self-driving cars, you massively increase the utility of any given car. A typical car is driven about 12 hours a week. You think of maybe depending on the situation where you live, it's like maybe an hour and a half a day or something like that. Or in LA, it might be 2 hours a day. So roughly 12 hours a week, and there's 168 hours in a week, in a 7-day week. So most likely cars that are autonomous could maybe do a third of the hours in the week or something like that. So maybe they do, I don't know, 60 hours a week of usage instead of 12. So you get basically a 5x increase in asset utilization there, and far less need for parking, less parking garages, and that kind of thing. So, but this in itself is good for the environment because you need fewer cars to get the same thing done. And we would need fewer parking garages and places just to keep cars when they're not in use, because they'd be just being in use a lot more. So, please, Tesla's autopilot/AI team, I think will quite appreciate that Tesla has some of the most advanced AI in the world, both on the software side and on the hardware side. And on the software, on the hardware side, we've obviously got our inference computer, which I think is still the best inference computer out there, even though it's been going for a couple of years. And then we're building Dojo, which will be the world's most powerful training computer, because it's got to process vast amounts of video training data, and bringing the day of self-driving sooner translates directly to lives saved and injuries avoided. Because about 1 million people die every year in car accidents, and about 10 million per year have serious injuries. So that's the sooner the better, and a lot of lives will be saved, and people's lives made better if it happens sooner.
Elon, on self-driving, you made headlines, I think, a while back when you basically, to put it mildly, criticized LiDAR as a key technology for self-driving. Could you talk more about that and why, you're not such a huge fan of LiDAR?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm just talking smack,
No, we didn't know that.
Yep, it's time you knew.
We took those tweets seriously.
I confess. First of all, I'm not fundamentally against LiDAR on all things, because for the SpaceX Dragon that docks with the space station, we actually developed and built our own LiDAR for docking with the space station. So obviously, if I hated LiDAR, we would not have done that. And this is well before. This is like 10 years ago we started doing that. So I don't have some sort of weird antagonism to LiDAR. However, for driving on real world roads, you have to solve vision. You have to solve vision, basically understanding objects with passive optical photons, and then making sense of those objects. So like vision, perception. What do those objects mean? What are they going to do? What is their likely path of travel? And then control. And all of that really is AI. The way we're doing it is by running a bunch of neural nets in our head. So we have to run a bunch of neural nets to do the same thing in the car. And at the point at which you've solved passive optical, and this is better passive optical than a human has, because you've got 8 cameras, 3 of which point directly forward, 2 that are diagonally forward, and 2 that are diagonally rear, and 1 rear. So the way we do it right now is we have all 8 cameras synchronized with. So you've got 8 frames collected simultaneously, and we're moving towards, and have in fact mostly moved towards video training. So you've got 8 surround cameras. It's like kind of a surreal thing to see, because people look, really. People have 2 eyes, but kind of really more like 1 eye, because the 2 eyes kind of combine. But anyway, the neural net it needs to move to full video training, video inference, surround video training, surround video inference, and then it will be superhuman, no question about it. There's just because people don't have eyes in the back of their head. You basically have effectively a human for all intents and purposes, it's like having one camera on a slow gimbal, and that is often distracted, and maybe sort of drunk, or change the radio, or they fall asleep, or there's all sorts of things that go wrong. There's no question that you can be superhuman with just cameras. And I think if one is going to go with sort of active photon generation, I would recommend something in the occlusion penetrating wavelengths. So like radar, it's sort of roughly 4 millimeter radar, something like that, would be better if you're going to really delve into the arena of active photon generation.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. Okay. Also, I love how deep you got into that. It was super, super fun. All right. It's safe to say a lot of people are very interested in how you work. And you often, for example, describe yourself as an engineer. So walk us through, it's Monday morning, you wake up. What does a typical work day in the life of Elon look like?
I guess I wake up and see if there are any emergencies on text or email, and often there are. I mean, a ton of what I deal with is not actually fun or interesting. It's like chores. So I've tried really hard not to do my chores, but then if I don't do my chores, things go to hell. So, oh man, you have to do your chores. Basically.
I'm a bit relieved that Elon Musk basically has the same schedule as the rest of us. We all get here, and you do too. And it's kind of, there's something just really relieving just hearing you say that.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much how it goes these days. I do enjoy the in-person meetings more than email. In fact, I think I'm getting a slight negative limbic reaction to email. It's killing me. Texts are way better to deal with, and then in-person meetings are much better. Even Zoom meetings or whatever, they're still better than email. Anything's better than email, frankly. So anyway, I'll have a bunch of meetings. I'll write email, write text, especially if it's like an email to the group, like saying, hey, I think we need to change direction, do the following things. And let me know if you think otherwise, but otherwise we're going to do these things and get our act together in this area or that area. And then, a bunch of meetings. Most of my meetings are engineering and design. But of course, we have to deal with finance and, sales and other things. And, the things that are necessary for a company to function. And then there's this quite a lot of context switching. So he sent me a meme of fear is not the mind killer, context switching is the mind killer, which I totally agree with. Context switching is a real bear. So just try to basically try to do less context switching. So maybe focus on one thing for an hour and then another thing for another hour. It's really hard to context switch between SpaceX and Tesla and all the things that are going on at SpaceX and Tesla, and then Neuralink, Boring Company, which fortunately pretty low bandwidth. They don't take a high level of CPU load because they're smaller, and there's their personal stuff and of course memes. Gotta get.
That's important. How do you get them in?
Where's my meme, man? We're expecting a meme by now.
You're calling up your meme dealer for your hit of memes. I love it.
Exactly.
Elon, earlier last year I talked to Mark about how he spends his time, and Mark talked about when he was younger, he used to have large blocks of open time on his calendar, and I think a lot of well-known founders have large blocks of open time and schedule time. Now you are unique because you have multiple companies you're running. You're also much more of an engineer than traditional CEOs. What does your calendar look like? Are you allocated 30 minutes back to back? You have a lot of open space. How do you handle it?
I do not have a lot of open space. It's generally back-to-back meetings, and it's insane. My days are like insane torrents. tons of information. I mean, sometimes people like, if you want to like audit what I do for a day, it's insane. I don't recommend it. I mean, yeah. I was thinking, like, man, how long can I keep this up? Because I don't want my brain to explode. And it's like the meetings that are scheduled are not like nice to have meetings. They're like, this meeting is essential. Like, okay, it's pretty intense. I think like maybe I should like at some point like take a week off or something, you know, clear my mind. Or like, I know there's like a bunch of people like writing books on Tesla and SpaceX, for example. Like it's pretty hard for them to get it right because they just weren't there. And maybe I should like write some like book of my experiences that has like, you know, all the foolish mistakes I've done and like, you know, some advice for others that might be helpful.
I think so. A book, a documentary. I think, you know, I mean, I remember once hearing about how you still sleep on the floor of your factory. I remember you used to at one point in time.
I did. I only if there's like a crisis situation. And you know, I actually, it's like basically when the team is being asked to really work super hard, I got to be right there with them, and they got to see it. You know, seeing is believing. And so if I'm just sleeping in the middle of the factory floor, and I sort of go to sleep at 4 a.m, like, you know, waking up like 4 hours later, and like they literally see me, they walk past me. It's not like hidden or anything. And it's like, okay, CEO is willing to, if I can take that level of pain, then they'll do it too.
I was going to say, when you first said you slept in the factory, I figured, you know, there must be like an executive floor or something. You must have like the couch, and it must be like a nice setup. And then, you know, when I came over to see you that one time, you know, it's like you have your conference room is literally in the middle of the factory, and like the giant. Sure, pardon my swearing, but I have to. The giant fucking robots are like 15 feet away.
Yeah.
And they're pounding metal, and it's like ear splitting, and your factory is like literally, or your room is like literally right in the middle of them. And then I saw your like sleeping bag in the conference room, so I assume that's where you're sleeping. And I didn't see any of the rooms. Like, yeah, so it's not just sleeping in the middle of the factory. It's like that's intense.
Most of the time, I did not sleep in the conference room because people could not see me in the conference room, so I slept on the floor outside the conference room. Otherwise, how do people know? You know, they don't know. Seeing's believing. So I most there just sleep on the floor outside the conference room so they could see that I was there.
Yep, that's an even more advanced level.
Yeah, that's more than heard. And I always would wake up and smell like oil and not filings. It was rough. Yeah, but I was asking people to really go all out, you know, and I can't expect them to go all out if I'm not doing the same thing.
That's super interesting because when people think, you know, and you know, again, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. When people think, how does the richest person in the world live? They don't think uncomfortably sleeping outside of it, like a lot of loud banging going on right next door. They probably don't, but the people at the factory do. They saw it themselves. I love it. That's what's important, you know. Okay, I love it. Okay, switching topic just a little bit. I think a lot of people, you know, okay, you have your hands full with SpaceX and Tesla, you know, and the Boring Company and Neuralink. If you had to start, if you somehow magically found an extra 5 hours in the day, and you had to start another company or another effort, what would you start?
Well, I have no plans to start yet another thing.
You have all this free time.
Yeah, my head will definitely explode.
It's like the gladiator meme. Are you not entertained enough? Have you not created enough companies?
Indeed. I think there are still tremendous opportunities in tunneling. You know, for 5 years, people asked me what I see opportunities, and I'd say tunneling, and then nobody did anything. So then actually initially as a joke created the Boring Company. We did like a test tunnel in LA, and then still people didn't believe us. And then so we just did our first operational tunnel in Vegas. But the world really needs tunnels because all major cities have traffic, and tunnels can massively improve people's quality of life by making it easier to travel from one place to another in a city. And then that can be further expanded to long distance travel, where if you just throw a vacuum on the tunnel, then you can go extremely fast, faster than a plane, and faster than a plane or a high-speed rail. So I'd really still recommend, can someone else say, please start a tunneling company, that'd be great. Then there's RNA or mRNA, basically synthetic viruses, which is we've seen put to good effect with BioNTech and Moderna. But I think we'll quite appreciate that what's actually going on is the digitization of medicine. So it's where you can just literally, create an RNA or DNA sequence like a computer program, and then encapsulate that in a you have to multiply many billions of times, and encapsulate that in a lipid shell, so it looks like a tasty treat for your cells, and you can literally do anything. This is absolutely the future of medicine. You could probably figure out how to turn someone into a literal butterfly. Okay, your cells are biological computers. They execute just like sort of an old school computer where you feed it like you feed it a tape, or a punch card. That's you feed your cells, which are tiny biological computers, this punch card, and they will do whatever that punch card says. So that was probably a big eye opener for 2020 of just the understanding the potential of RNA, and then just super randomly, Tesla actually is making a fairly advanced RNA sort of microfab or something where currently for CureVac, but we're open to making it for other companies as well.
Wait. I'm not sure I understand this. Why is Tesla making RNA fab?
It's super random. So, like about a little over 4 years ago, we acquired a company in Germany, primarily for they're very good at automation. They're called Groman, and they're in southern Germany near basically a city of Rome. And at the time of the acquisition, they said look, we're willing to be acquired, but there's just a couple of projects that we think, even though they're not related to automotive, we'd really like to continue, if you don't mind. The two projects were one is this tiny chip analyzer, or a thing with tiny wires for analyzing chips that Intel needs for making CPUs, and then another one was this biotech thing it's basically there's three parts to it. There's a DNA multiplier, an RNA multiplier, and something which puts them the lipid shell on the RNA sequence. We're on version 3 of it now, and they said could they keep going? So if you keep it under 10% of resources, no problem, we can keep going. And then I don't know, it turned out it may actually be useful.
I just love that you accidentally found yourself with an RNA fab. By the way, you've been talking a lot about how mRNA obviously has been key to the Moderna vaccines and all the COVID-19 vaccines, which brings me to COVID. Let us say somehow magically tomorrow you were running the vaccine effort, the distribution effort right now. What would you do to get the vaccines out?
Specifically around the delivery and the logistics side, which we just don't seem to be doing a really good job across the world. So what would you do differently there?
Well, I don't have good insight into the situation as it stands, but I think relaxing the requirements on this seems to be there are too many requirements of who can get the vaccine. The vaccine really is important for anyone with that's elderly or has a compromised immune system, or is otherwise at risk for the virus. And I think really just saying first come, first serve. Show up here. Like use CVS and Walgreens, which give out the vaccine every year, and say, okay, just show up here, and especially for the Moderna and BioNTech vaccines, which are quite temperature sensitive, they can only be sort of defrosted from the deep freeze briefly, and then they must be used or they lose their effectiveness. This is because my understanding is the RNA, because the RNA sequences they use are not stable. Those sequences want to revert to something else. Because they're not stable, they must be frozen at a very low temperature, or they will simply want to revert to a lower energy state RNA sequence. That's my understanding of it. So just like, instead of worrying about like this, is the exact right person going to get the vaccine, like just accept that maybe some people who shouldn't get the vaccine will get it, but we'll still get a whole lot more vaccines out there, and let's not worry about the details here. Let's just get it to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. And for sure, we should not worry about the second dose quite yet. Just give everyone the first dose. I suspect that the immunity granted by the first dose is very significant. And we've got, that third dose, the second dose is like 3 or 4 weeks later. So we've got plenty of time to think about the second dose. Just worry about the first dose, first come, first served, and don't worry about like accidentally giving the damn thing to someone who maybe didn't deserve it. That will happen a little bit. So that's my recommendation on that front. We are going to be there is going to be an avalanche of vaccine coming. I think the U.S. may have ordered something like 900 million doses sent by, and the combination of there's going to be we were going to have so much COVID vaccine. I guarantee you it will be thrown away later this year, more than we could possibly ever need or want. And the Johnson & Johnson vaccine just got approved, which is that's good because that's a more conventional vaccine, but it's a single shot, room temperature. And then there are more and more vaccines that are going to get approved. Hopefully the CureVac one will be approved soon. I know, because I know the Tesla machine, it can make a bazillion doses super fast. So, I think there's definitely, for those who are concerned about the vaccine, you should expect an exponential increase in vaccine availability. And then combined with that, we are, I think, starting to approach some degree of herd immunity with people who contract the virus and recovered. So, which is actually better than getting vaccine. The antibody reaction is better than if you got the vaccine. So, could go on and on about it. But overall, I think, optimistic message that there will be lots of vaccines, and I would really encourage people to take the vaccine. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I want to be clear. I'm a pro-vaxxer.
So, speaking of the vaccine, California has been sort of bouncing between kind of 40th, 45th, and 50th in the country, by states in terms of the speed of the rollout. And it for me, it sort of, it re-raises this question that's been coming up more and more, which is, you and I and a lot of people, here listening have built our companies, primarily in California up until now. What's your view on the future of California from here?
Well, first of all, I should say I love California, and I've lived more than half my life in California. Just I'm, Californian. Like so much of I built my companies here. Came here as a summer. Came to Silicon Valley as a summer intern to work on energy storage technology for electric vehicles. Way back in 92, I think it was 92 or 93. There's a little company called Pinnacle Research in Los Gatos. I got to Silicon Valley as soon as I could. And then at Stanford, I was going to be working on sort of advanced capacitors for use in electric vehicles, grad studies, and ended up putting that on hold for the internet. And trying to get a job at Netscape, by the way.
So I have heard that story indirectly. I would actually like for you to tell it so that I can learn what mistake I made.
Okay, well, first of all, I wouldn't say I did a very good job of trying to get a job at Netscape, but I was convinced that the internet would be the future. You know, essentially, the humanity communicated by osmosis until then, but with the internet, it would be like humanity acquiring a nervous system and becoming much more of a superorganism. And so I was like, okay, well, I could do a PhD at Stanford on sort of advanced capacitors for use in electric vehicles, which may or may not be successful. Like I could get the PhD, but would it be useful or not? Uncertain. Or I could be part of building the internet, which was so it's either like do the PhD and watch the internet get built right in front of me, or put grad studies on hold and try to help build the internet in some way. And I mean, you're basically the only internet company. So I sent my resume, and I was like, I didn't get any feedback. And then I tried hanging out in the lobby, but I was too shy to speak to anyone. And I was like, man, what a charlatan I am sitting in this lobby. Wow. And then I just started writing software myself because I'm like, okay, well, I'll just write software myself. And I actually wrote the first maps and directions on the internet. I'm not sure how many people are aware of that, but the first maps, directions, yellow pages, and white pages, I wrote it personally. It was just me on my computer. And when we started our first company, we only had one computer. The website only worked during the day because I was coding at night, and the server ran during the day. That was quite an adventure, that's for sure. Yeah.
So I just want to let you know that the next time you show up at one of my companies and hang out in the lobby for an internship, you're going to get an internship.
Wow, thanks, man.
Yeah. But only if you get the stuff running 24/7. Like you can't slack off at night.
No sleeping outside the controls. That's not okay.
Yeah.
We will provide you with not just one but two computers.
Nice.
Okay. I want to wrap up with some light questions for you, which I think a lot of people are curious in. What are you watching on TV? What are you reading right now?
Well, I just finished watching The Last Kingdom, which I think is a great piece of mostly accurate historical drama. There's Cobra Kai, which is if you grew up in
It's so good.
It's so good. It's such a sick burn, that show. My goodness. I mean, they just like turn the knife constantly. Let's see, what else have we been watching?
What do you think of The Expanse?
Maybe I should start watching that. I think there's like some sort of like things about like having a shortage of water or something. There's something like it didn't make any scientific sense at first, so I was like, come on, this is dumb. So then I stopped watching it, but it sounds like maybe I should keep watching it. I need to watch something on the treadmill, otherwise I won't work out because I hate working out.
Yeah, I think you'll find. I mean, I think season 4 now. I think you'll find it's apparently. I think you'll know more than I will, but the sort of most accurate representation of what actual like interplanetary travel would be like. Once it's sort of made routine. And by the way, the politics that flow, right? And so it sort of sets up a three-way battle between basically Earth and Mars, and then the asteroid belt, and kind of gets into all the.
If the battle's possible in the future, I would say that would be a good outcome because it means that humanity's actually made it out there. As long as they don't annihilate each other. Besides the Expanse, I mean, what do you recommend?
Have you seen? I think I've got one for you. I just got to bring one up. Devs, spelled DEVS.
Yes.
If you have not seen Devs, Dev is definitely the show for you. And I will not say any more, but you will enjoy it.
All right, Devs. A game that's pretty good is Mythic Quest.
Yes.
Yes.
Amazing.
Oh my God, my favorite.
Best after TV show.
Yeah, good one.
Did you see the Ravens Banquet, the most recent one?
Yeah, it's great.
So good.
Have you seen Tenet yet? The new Christopher Nolan movie?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Wow. Okay. And did you understand Tenet?
Well, I think if you think too hard about Tenet, it's not going to make maybe complete sense. But I enjoyed the movie.
It's funny because that's kind of what Nolan said too in one of the interviews. He said, just don't go deep into it. Just enjoy it for the movie. And 4 hours later, I emerged from Reddit being I still don't entirely get it. So I should have just skim through it. Just watched it for the fun of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Elon. I think you don't want to take up too much of your time. This has been amazing. You've pretty much broken Clubhouse. There are probably about over a dozen, maybe more overflow rooms, and I see so many Twitter threads right now. You've been so generous. For all your listeners here and on Twitter, you've been asking for people to join Neuralink. You've been asking people to join Tesla. Do you have any final thoughts for everybody who's listening to you right now?
Well, do you want to hear the real story from Vlad from Robinhood about what happened this week with GameStop?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, you need to let him somehow click on a button so he can talk.
All right, let me figure this out.
While we're figuring it out, Elon, why don't you talk to us about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, since you mentioned that right at the beginning?
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams is in fact a book of philosophy disguised as a silly humor book. And if you read it from the standpoint of, wow, this is an interesting book of philosophy, it's quite insightful. As mentioned, he really gets to the point of the answer is easy once you can properly formulate the question. I like the fact that the ship is powered by infinite improbability. It's called the Heart of Gold.
Yeah.
So he makes fun of bureaucracy. In fact, Earth essentially gets destroyed by a sort of clerical error or essentially, they basically decide that they need to have an interstellar highway, and then Earth's in the way, and so they post the fact that Earth needs to get destroyed for this interstellar highway. But of course, it's posted on an alien bulletin board that no one on Earth can access, and so then they're surprised when people on Earth are unhappy about this. It's it was posted on the board. What do you mean? What board? Some of the things in Doug Adams' book, like the Babel fish, where you put the fish in your ear that automatically translates, we kind of have that already. The truth is coming back.
Elon, okay. Vlad, can you hear us?
Vlad the Stock Impaler.
Hey guys, thanks for inviting me up. It's good to hang with all of you.
All right, Vlad, what really happened? Give us the inside scoop.
All right, well, I was actually hoping that you would invite me up for the Fermi paradox part because this has been a very surreal weekend and week for me. One of the really great things is all the people coming out of the woodwork to offer support for the company, offer advice. So I got introduced today. Actually, I should say I just randomly downloaded Clubhouse a couple of days ago just to see what it was all about. So this is my first time literally using the app. But I got introduced to your friend Antonio, Elon, who had some good advice for me, and then introduced me to you. You had some great advice. And then I figured, I heard about this Clubhouse, and this has got to be part of the simulation. So I just thought, why not? So here I am. So I'm actually an adherent to the simulation hypothesis.
All right. Well, spill the beans, man. What happened last week? Why do you stop people? Why can people buy the GameStop shares? The people demand an answer, and they want to know the details and the truth.
Yep. Okay, so let me start by giving a little bit of background. So I'm the chief executive of Robinhood. Robinhood is actually I'll go through this quickly. Don't worry. This is important. It's actually a couple of companies. So there's an introducing broker dealer called Robinhood Financial, and that basically is the app that you know and love. It processes trades. You're a customer of Robinhood Financial. Then there's a clearing broker-dealer, Robinhood Securities, that clears and settles the trades. And then we have Robinhood Crypto, which is our crypto business, all of these are kind of different entities that are differently operated. So basically Wednesday of last week, we just had, unprecedented volume, unprecedented load on the system. A lot of these, so-called meme stocks were, going viral on social media, and people were joining Robinhood, and there was a lot of net buy activity on them, as you guys all know. And Robinhood at this time, I think, was number one on the iOS App Store, and pretty close, if not number one, on Google Play as well. So just unprecedented activity. And so Thursday morning, right? So I'm sleeping, but at 3:30 a.m. Pacific, our operations team receives a file from the NSCC, which is the National Securities Clearing Corporation. So basically, as a clearing broker, and this is where Robinhood Securities comes in, we have to put up money to the NSCC based on some factors, including things like the volatility of the trading activity, concentration into certain securities, and this is the equities business. So it's based on stock trading and not options trading or anything else. So they give us a file with a deposit, and the request was around $3 billion, which is, about an order of magnitude more than what it typically is, right? So,
why was that so high? Like, this seems like it sounds like this is an unprecedented increase in demand for capital. What formula did they use to calculate that?
Well, and just to give context, Robinhood up until that point has raised, a little bit, around $2 billion in total venture capital up until now. So it's a big number. Like $3 billion is a large number, right? So basically, the details are, we don't have the full details. It's a little bit of an opaque formula, but there's a component called the VAR of it, which is value at risk, and that's based on kind of some fairly quantitative things, although it's not fully transparent. So there are ways to reverse engineer it, but it's not kind of publicly shared. And then there's a special component, which is discretionary. So that kind of acts as a multiplier, and basically discretionary meaning like it's just their opinion. Yeah, it's a little bit. I mean, I'm sure there's definitely more than just their opinion, but basically, well, I mean, I guess like it's based on growth. What everyone wants to know is like, did something maybe shady go down here? It's like seems weird that you'd get a sudden $10 billion demand. 3 in the morning. Sorry, how much? Yeah, it was $3 billion US dollars. $3 billion. Okay, so it's $3 billion around. Just suddenly out of nowhere. And what percentage? I wouldn't impute shadiness to it or anything like that. And actually, the NSCC was reasonable subsequent to this, and they worked with us to actually lower it. So it was unprecedented activity. I don't have the full context about what's going on in the NSCC to make these calculations, but essentially it was a large number. Is anyone holding you hostage right now? No, I'm okay. Thanks for asking. But anyway, so this was obviously nerve-wracking, and I actually was asleep at this point. The operations team was was fielding this at 3 o'clock. And then, we got back, we put our heads together. Our chief operating officer basically said, look, let's call up the higher ups at the NSCC and kind of figure out what's going on. Maybe there's some way we can work with them. And basically there was another call, and they lowered it to something like $1.4 billion from 3. So, we were making some progress, right? And then, but it's still a high number. And then we basically proposed, well, let's explain how we plan to, let's explain how, we'll manage risk in these symbols throughout the day. We proposed marking these volatile stocks that were kind of driving the activity, position closing only. And then at about an hour before market open, so 5:30 or 5 in the morning, they came back and they said, okay, the charge is, or the deposit, $700 million, which we then deposited and paid promptly, and then everything was fine. So that essentially explains why we had to mark these symbols position closing only, and also why we knew this was a bad outcome for customers. Part of what's been really difficult is Robinhood stands for democratizing access to stocks, and we want to give people the access. So that's been very, very challenging. But we had no choice in this case. We had to conform to our regulatory capital requirements, and so the team did what they could to make sure we were available for customers.
Who controls this organization, this clearinghouse? It's a consortium. It's not quite a government agency. I don't really know the details of all of that. Okay, but and to be fair, like we were. I think there was legitimate sort of turmoil in the markets. Like, these are unprecedented events with these meme stocks, and there was a lot of activity. So there probably is some amount of extra risk in the system that warrants higher requirements. So it's not entirely unreasonable. But we did operational processes to make sure that customers that had positions could sell their open positions, because obviously restricting someone, we got a lot of questions about, okay, you had to restrict buying, why didn't you also restrict selling? And the fact of the matter is, people get really pissed off if they're holding stock and they want to sell it and they can't, right? So I think that's categorically worse. So and lots of other brokers, I think, were in the same situation. Robinhood was in the news, but you sort of heard this industry-wide, right? Other brokers basically restricted the same exact activity. All right, so it sounds like this organization